Have you ever heard a story that sounds like a movie, but it's 100% true? Well, get ready. We're about to dive into an amazing story about a young king, a forgotten kingdom, and a mysterious scroll that changed absolutely everything. I mean, really, think about that for a second. What if you stumbled upon a dusty old book, and it turned out to be the long-lost instruction manual for your entire country? A book nobody's even seen for generations. For a young king named Josiah, this wasn't just some crazy what-if scenario. It actually happened. And this discovery was about to turn his world completely upside down. So let's set the scene. Our story takes place in the kingdom of Judah, but something was off. It was kind of like a country that had lost its memory. They had totally forgotten the most important rules for how to live. And why? Well, a king before Josiah, Manasseh, just didn't care about them. So the book, the most important book in the land, got lost, just tucked away somewhere, gathering dust. And you can kind of see the timeline right here. It all started out pretty good with King Hezekiah. He made sure everyone knew the rules. But then came King Manasseh, and everything went sideways. The book disappeared. And into this whole mess steps our hero, Josiah. And get this, he becomes king when he's only 8 years old. Can you imagine being a kid and finding out your whole country lost its instruction manual? Okay, so let's fast forward a few years. Josiah's grown up a bit, and he's a really good king. He decides it's time to fix up the giant, beautiful temple that had been totally neglected. He's just thinking it's a simple repair job, clean up the place, make it look good again. He has no idea that his workers are about to stumble upon the biggest discovery in their history. And then it happens. Right there in the middle of all the dust and rubble, the high priest, a guy named Hilkiah, finds it. The scroll. The book of the law. He immediately knows this is a huge deal, so he rushes this precious scroll over to the king's most trusted scribe, Shaphan, and basically says, "You have to read this, find out what it says." Now, Shaphan could tell this wasn't just any old document. This was a 5-alarm fire, a national emergency. So he drops everything, goes straight to King Josiah, unrolls this ancient scroll, and starts to read. And in the quiet of that throne room, for the first time in generations, these powerful words were spoken out loud. As Josiah sat there and listened, his entire world just stopped. He was hearing these rules for the first time in his life. The book laid it all out, plain and simple. It was a choice. You could follow these laws and get amazing blessings, life, happiness, the whole deal. Or you could ignore them and face some really scary consequences. Curses, disaster.
Yeah, not good.
And Josiah's reaction? Oh, it was pure terror. He instantly realized that his people, his entire kingdom, had been breaking every single one of these rules without even knowing it. He was so horrified, so deeply sad and scared, that he literally tore his royal robes. That was a way of showing you were completely heartbroken. He knew, in that moment, they were in very, very big trouble. But here's the thing about Josiah. He wasn't someone who just panicked and gave up. No way. He was a king of action. So his very first move wasn't to hide, it was to get wisdom. He sent his top officials to a wise woman, a prophetess named Huldah, with one simple, urgent question. What do we do now? So Huldah came back with a message from God, and wow, it was intense. First, the bad news. The kingdom had gone down the wrong path for too long, and disaster was coming because of it. But then there was some good news, specifically for Josiah. God saw that the king's reaction was real, that his heart was genuinely tender and broken about this. And because of that, God promised him that he personally would not have to see that disaster happen. Even with that scary prediction hanging over them, Josiah was determined. He decided, nope, not on my watch. He wasn't going to just let his kingdom keep making the same mistakes. So he did something huge. He called a giant meeting, a national assembly. He gathered everyone, all the elders, the priests, regular everyday people, everyone came to the temple. And in this absolutely incredible moment, King Josiah himself stood up in front of the entire nation, and he read the whole book out loud to them. Can you just imagine that? The king's voice, full of emotion, echoing as he shared these powerful, lost words, making sure every single person finally heard the rules they had all forgotten. After everyone heard the words from the book, the king led them all in making what's called a covenant. Now, this wasn't just any old promise. This was a super serious, solemn deal between them and God. They all stood together and promised that from that day forward, they would follow the rules in that book with everything they had, with all their heart and all their soul. All right, now we get to the action-packed part of the story, because making a promise is one thing, right? But Josiah knew they had to prove they meant it. So, armed with the law from that lost scroll, he launched one of the biggest royal cleanups in history. And let me tell you, he was serious. This wasn't just a little tidying up. This was a complete, top-to-bottom national cleanse. As you can see, he went everywhere. He had his men break down all the wrong altars, smash all the idols into dust, and chop down any places used for false worship. He was on a mission. Okay, and this part is just mind-blowing. In the middle of this cleanup, Josiah actually fulfilled a prophecy that had been made 300 years earlier. 300 years! The prophecy said a king named Josiah would come and destroy a very specific bad altar in a place called Bethel. And he did it, exactly as it had been foretold centuries before he was even born. And the guy just didn't stop. He tore down bad shrines that even the legendary King Solomon had built. After that, he organized the biggest Passover celebration, a super important religious feast that anyone could remember. He was totally all in, traveling all over the country to make sure every last trace of the bad stuff was gone. So, after all that, what's the final verdict on King Josiah? Well, the history books are pretty clear. They say there was no king like him, not before him, and not after. He's remembered as one of the absolute best because he turned his whole heart and his whole nation back to God. And it all started with finding one lost book. Just think about it for a minute. This massive, nationwide change all kicked off because one person found one forgotten scroll during a routine repair job. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? It shows that one discovery in the hands of one person who's brave enough to do something about it really can change the world. What do you think?